Tēnā koutou katoa, I'm Connor Whitten, no mai, and welcome to Newshub Nation's Wellington Mayoral debate. With me are the three leading candidates, Paul Eagle, Andy Foster, who is the current mayor, and Tory Whānau. Thank you all so much for being here this morning.
Pleasure. We're
going to get to the debate in a moment, but before we get to the answers, we need to look at the problems, and Wellington has had its fair share of woes.
A geyser-like fountain of water gushing into the sky.
Wellington leaks like a sieve. We've got major problems with leaks.
Silt lining the pavements of closed streets in the capital.
They've got to do something.
Disastrous. It's kept people out of the area.
The latest problem, sewage. This concrete retaining wall was no match for 50 cubic metres of moving earth.
For decades, the government says the capital's transport infrastructure has been underinvested.
This should have happened years ago.
A key problem is the rising cost of housing.
We were about 10 days away from being homeless.
We literally can't afford to rent Wellington rent prices.
So an awful lot to do there for the next Mayor of Wellington. I want you all, we've done this a lot of times, you've done so many debates, throw your elevator pitch away just for a moment and I want to know what you're going to do in your first 100 days to fix these urgent problems facing Wellington. Andy, you're the incumbent. Let's hear from you.
Well, I think in the first 100 days we'll complete the biggest reservoir the city's ever built. We'll have the consents grant, or at least applied for our sludge treatment and our landfill. We will have made some decisions on the Golden Mile, which is part of our transport system. We'll obviously have to set the council up and make sure it's working well. And we'll be working towards getting a new housing entity, in fact, two new housing entities, one which we agreed with the government.
Paul?
And there's a few more things beside that as well, but yeah, that's a starter.
Paul?
Well, this is about leadership, and the first thing I want to do is talk to those people who are successful on Saturday the 8th of October and form a united council. It doesn't matter where they're from, what party they belong to, or whether they're independent. It's absolutely critical that the next Wellington City Council is united. So that's priority number one. Number two will be to look at the housing strategy and to say, look, we need to get building homes. Number three will be to commission a review.
Okay, we don't need the elevator pitch. We'll get to all of these issues later. Tory, what are you going to do in your first 100 days?
Well, first and foremost, we need to get our council unified and working together to get things done. And that also includes our council staff as well. They need to be part of the process and that we all trust each other. I really want to accelerate Let's Get Welly moving. We need our public transport system sorted right away and utilise that to build more houses along the corridor from Waterfront to the hospital. That's up to 20,000 new homes and I'm really excited about it.
OK, stagnant, stale and dull. Those are the words of the Wellington Chamber of Commerce. This happened under your watch, Andy. You've been a councillor for 30 years, so why would anything be different this time around?
Well, I think the council's clearly going to be different, but I think when I look at what the Chamber was saying, many of the things that they're saying we're actually dealing with. I mean, the first thing they said is invest in infrastructure. So if you look around the city, we are actually doing that. We are fixing those pipes. So I said to Wellington Water a year or so back, I need a plan for the central city so we never get wastewater into our harbour again. And you can see that. You can see we've built a big new pipe along Bowen and Whitmore Street, and we're building one now up Taranaki Street. There's a $24 million investment. So we are responding to exactly the things that they are wanting us to do.
OK, you say you'll have a different council, but you're not in control of that. If you get another majority Labor and Green council, the last one that you couldn't work with, what are you going to do then?
Look, I think there are different personalities now. Some of the most challenging personalities are not going to be there. And so, look, I'm quite confident about the council that we're likely to see elected.
Tory, you're shaking your head. What do you have to say to that?
It should not matter who's on council. The best leader can work with anyone, whether it's National Party supporters, Labor,
so
Green.
Easy.
I can pull people together, and I've done it. I did that on central government. I worked with New Zealand First incredibly well.
I think the issue there is if you've got a council that starts saying we actually want to bring you down from the word go, that's not that easy.
That shouldn't matter. The right leader should know how to work through that.
But I worked through, and I did work through that.
Okay,
and we've actually got a council that's now functioning quite well.
Let's talk about all of your experience. And Tory, you are the least experienced candidate in local government, certainly. You mentioned what you've done in central government, but New Zealand First ran roughshod over a lot of what the Greens wanted to do during that period. So how can you stand here today and say that you can reach across the aisle at the council and convince people to do what you want?
So they were in coalition with the Labor Party. We were in confidence and supply, so there was a different level of power. We didn't have cabinet ministers.
Agreement you negotiated?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I did. Very proud of that. But we actually still achieved, I'd say, the majority of our agreement. And then
But not light rail? And not cameras on fishing boats and not a capital gains tax.
But then we were re-elected to government again, and that's work that I'm really proud of. So I still remain friends with a lot of the New Zealand First staff and politicians today, and that's because I really care about relationship management.
OK, Paul, Why are you the right person to bring the council
Look, I've
together?
been a city councillor, I've been the city's deputy mayor. We had a united council. I was dispatched to deal with the blue team, and I got them across the line. And that's what Wellingtonians want to see. They want to see their next mayor being able to unify that council. I'm a member of Parliament. I know what it takes. The rough and tough of forming a united Wellington is what Wellingtonians want.
You are a Member of Parliament, and when you ran, you said you weren't going to run for mayor. You've changed your mind. You're clearly running. Also this week, you backtracked when you backed an independent candidate over a Labour one. Why should voters trust what you have to say?
Well, let's address that last point first. It's about unity. It's about the next mayor being able to bring together a broad church, a broad range of people with different personalities, and I've proven that I can do that. I want to also reassure voters that I changed my mind because Wellingtonians came to me and said, we need someone who's got the experience, and I think that's being honest with them, is that you can change your mind, but ultimately it will be up to the voters.
So how do we know you won't change your mind on the campaign promises you're standing with today?
What you're talking about is what Wellingtonians want. They want to see a mayor who has a plan that reflects what Wellington has said. These are the priorities. We'll be talking about infrastructure, we'll be talking about housing, and we'll be talking about restoring Wellington's mana as the capital city. I'm not going to change my mind on those because those are the things that Wellingtonians want.
OK, so let's test this then. If you don't win the mayoralty, will you stand again for Parliament?
Those are things that I will address if it happens, but I'm in this race to win, so that's not going to happen.
If the Labor Party still wants them, of course.
Do you think you'll be welcomed back by Labor if you don't win this?
Let's clear this up. I'm here to win, and I'm here to serve Wellingtonians who want me to be Wellington's next mayor.
OK, Tori, I want to ask you a similar question. I mean, you've already said that if you don't become mayor, that you would like to run for the Greens in Parliament. Are you committed to being the mayor of Wellington?
100%. First and foremost, I want to be Mayor of Wellington, but if I lose, I'm going to need a job. And I think my experience in central government, or just Parliament for an opposition, I'll do a couple of terms and then I'll run for Mayor again because that is what I want. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There are similarities between those roles.
OK, let's get into the nitty-gritty. We wanted to hear from Wellingtonians about what's most important to them, and there'll be probably no surprise to all of you that infrastructure is the biggest issue by far. Let's take a listen.
My question is, what are you going to do to fix Wellington's infrastructure? Not talk around it, fix it, not actually make excuses for not doing anything.
We've already got issues with leaky pipes and so on. I'd say this is the absolute top priority. So what are you going to do about it and when?
I'm going to start with you there, Paul. I know you all want to fix the pipes, so the question is, when?
Well, I want to get back to basics. The when comes into commissioning a review because I'd like to commit more than the $2.7 billion there already. Wellingtonians have told us this is their number one priority.
More than $2.7 billion? Where's the money going to come from?
Well, the money will come from the review. What I want to do is look at that. I also want to work with the central government on the three waters. I think that there's an opportunity there for Wellington to solve its water crisis with their help.
Andy, you don't believe in three waters. Do you think the council can do this on its own?
Look, we clearly need to invest more than we're doing, but I put the numbers in place. You said $2.7 billion. It was $1.85 billion under the administration which Paul was part of. In fact, the last LTP he was part of was $1.5 billion. So we're stepping up the investment significantly. As soon as we started having a problem, we got down there and started fixing things. We've got a condition assessment done so we know actually what the state of the pipes is. And the interesting thing is that the high criticality pipes are actually better than we thought they might be. And then obviously, as I said before, I got Wellington Water to do a plan for me about the central city. So we're fixing that. And the last one to say, which I don't think people are picking up on, the pipes are relatively old on average, but there's a very, very clear trajectory which the water use was dropping until the 2016 earthquake and then started rising again. So there's some earthquake damage in there as well.
Isn't your council's failure to fix this one of the poster childs for Three Waters reform?
Well, look, I think the reality is that the problem has occurred before us. I mean, the pipe started breaking almost at the moment I got elected.
So it's not your fault?
So no, look, we all have a responsibility for this, but we can't fix a long-term problem in 5 minutes flat. What I will say is we are fixing it, and I'm determined that we do continue to fix it, and we'll put the resources in that needs to be done. OK,
Tori, you do believe in Three Waters. And I want to know, though, what happens if National wins next year and they turn around and throw it out?
Yeah, so Wellingtonians have rightly identified pipes as our key problem, and it's something that I'm committed to do first. And so I am committing to the $2.7 billion that our council has put forward. I think that's really great. If it doesn't go through, I'll consider all funding options, including borrowing, targeted levies. We'll have to worry about that.
It's all borrowed anyway.
Can you please let me speak? We have to worry about that when we get to it. But I am a supporter of Three Waters. I will just say, though, look, with respect to our mayor, he's had 30 years to address this. This isn't just a recent problem.
Shouldn't you have a plan already for what happens if Three Waters doesn't go through? I mean, the polls are 50-50 here.
And I think when we get to that possible change of government, but my first priority will be meeting with the National Party or who is in government to sort that plan out. And I've actually been talking with national MPs in advance. So,
Paul, what's your plan if Three Waters doesn't, if it turns around next year?
Well, the first thing is that I have great relationships across the political spectrum, so those conversations have happened, but it needs to be factored in now. And Wellingtonians will need to have an honest conversation. That's why I'm commissioning the review. I'm looking at what things that are saying, look, things like the cost of consultants, for example, those that aren't doing core council business. Wellingtonians are clear that every dollar they spend, the priority must be on the pipes.
You're commissioning a review after this long in politics. I mean, you've been a councillor for 7 years. You've been a Wellington MP for 5. Shouldn't you know already what you want to do?
Well, let's get the facts. I haven't been on council for 5 years. I've been a member of parliament. I would have thought in 5 years that there would have been a plan in place.
There is.
This has been an issue for quite some time. It's impacting the reputation of Wellington as the capital city of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and it's got to stop.
You're the Rongotai MP and you're running for mayor. Shouldn't you know these things already?
I know that these are an issue. I'm expecting a mayor with 30 years' experience to have a plan to work with central government to fix it. That has not happened.
OK, before we go to break, we've all seen very recently in central government that politics is a brutal business. So I want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything you want to come clean to voters about before polling closes? Andy?
No, nothing to come clean on. I'm just getting on with doing the job, which I'm 100% committed to our beautiful city, and I want our city to be the best city in the world, and I'm absolutely confident that I can help deliver that.
Paul, any skeletons in the closet we should know about?
I want to say to Wellingtonians that I'm the best leader to lead this city, reset it.
OK, that's not a skeleton, Tory.
No, I think the reason my campaign is doing so well is because I'm honest and genuine. This is the real me. I've got nothing to confess.
OK, so no shockers there, but there is plenty of debate and a few surprises to come. Stay with us. We'll be back after the break. We are the leading candidates, Paul Eagle, incumbent Mayor Andy Foster and Tory Whānau. Welcome back. Let's get straight back into it with another critical issue. We asked voters what they want from their mayor. Here's what one Wellingtonian had to say.
How will the candidates keep rate increases below the rate of CPI?
Now, none of you are going to do that, are you? Rates are going to increase more than inflation. So, Paul Eagle, how bad is it going to get?
Well, for me, I want to commission a review on spending because I really want to have a closer look at what we are spending money on. Wellingtonians are clear around what they deem to be the priorities. I want to understand that better before I make any promises on rates figures.
OK, I want to drill deeper into this review and the cuts that you're going to make, because voters deserve to know this before they go to the polls. I mean, again, it's that question of you're an experienced guy. You've been around Wellington a very long time. You talk about back to basics. I know that's pipes, that's playgrounds, that's pools, that's parks. What isn't it? What is council spending money on now that they need to scrap?
So that's what I want to commission the review for, is because this is...
You must know. If you know you want to get back to basics, what isn't basic? What's extra?
Finish. I mean, the basics are defined by what Wellingtonians have said to me. There are some really basic things that they want the city to focus on. I want to make sure that we are spending money on those things, not on other things that are not basic.
OK, Andy, is that urgent enough? Is Paul unprepared?
Well, I think, all of the information is there in our budgets and our long-term plans. So if Paul's being serious about this, he should actually know that. Yes. And I agree with you. Look, he should be telling the community, I don't think that this is basic or this is basic or this is basic, and these are the kind of things that I would go to chop.
OK, so the question...
I think that's a matter of honesty.
The question is about rates. And Andy, you said, speaking of honesty, that you would have a rates increase of 13.5% last year as a one-off. Now we're going to have 12% next year and 12% the year after that. What happened?
Yeah, look, there's one thing that's happened that's really changed the ballpark. So we were looking at about another 33% over the next 7 years. It's now 60, and the big change has been the revaluation of the water assets. So basically what that is our water advisors saying that the cost of replacing those assets has gone up a lot. Now, if that's true across the country, then I'd say to Three Waters, you're not looking at $185 billion, you're probably looking at something more north of $300 billion. So goodness only knows what that looks like.
So we've got to get a one-off?
Well, at that point, that was the highest we were expecting, and then we were expecting to drop back. But that change is significant. So I'm always looking for savings, and I'll continue to do that. And I've identified a few areas where I would certainly go.
Like?
So, yeah, well, one of them is there's a development fund which you put up, $20 million. I would slow down the cycleway program. There's about $200 million there. So slow that down, take a bit longer over doing that. There's definitely savings, and let's get Wellington moving. So I'm going to be quite specific about where I would go.
Tori, you're shaking your head there. Why is that?
I think slowing down our cycleways is a mistake. We're facing a climate crisis, and public transport, especially a full cycleway network, is one of the best ways to lower our emissions and address that. Our people, tamariki, have the right to get across our communities safely and with the freedom to get across at any time that they want. They can't drive cars.
Can I be clear? I certainly don't mean stopping it, but what I do mean is taking the time to work with communities rather than just going bullet a gate, which is what we're tending to do at the moment.
OK, so all of these promises are expensive. Tori, I want to ask you again about rates. I mean, that increase over the next 2 years, 24%. Are you comfortable with that?
I'm not comfortable, but and I fully acknowledge that it's hard on people, especially in the cost of living crisis. However, we have to make significant investments in our city to get it moving. So I am committed to what our council has put forward.
And I think you all believe that, but will you commit to capping it at that? Could it go higher?
I think it would be irresponsible to rule out a cap at this point in time. We know that costs blow out, but I am committed to the next 3 years of not increasing that. But after then, I don't think anyone can actually do that. And that's why I want to utilise those relationships with central government to find other government funding sources.
Andy, will you commit to a cap, 24% next 2 years? That's as bad as it gets?
I would obviously like to pull it down from that. We've obviously got to do the infrastructure. But as I said, when the cost of replacing a pipe increases by 80%, almost overnight, that means you've got to get inside those numbers and understand whether those are real or not.
Yes or no? Capped at 24%?
Oh, as I said, I'd like to pull it down. OK,
Paul, and I know you want to do your review first. Maybe you don't know. Yes or no?
I want to do the review first because that will tell us. And there is one other thing here. But the city hasn't budgeted its 20% of $7.4 billion for Let's Get Wellington Moving. And these are the things that it's why I'm commissioning the review, because I want to find out where the waste is and prioritise it and make sure that those costs are in the budget.
Okay, we understand that, and we will get to transport, and you're right, there's a lot of money that needs to be found there. Just while we're on rates, I want to hear some new ideas from each of you. I want to know, Tori, what are your ideas for generating some income for the council so we're not constantly talking about putting rates up?
My approach has always been about actually working with central government and utilising those tools instead.
So funding will come from central government rather than from ratepayers?
Yes.
Yeah. OK. Andy, any ideas for how to make more money?
I'd be inclined to say good luck on that one, but there are some areas which you go. I mean, obviously, local government's very, very keen to get the GST back on rates, which would be a significant improvement. We also got in the transport field...
That's more money from ratepayers, though. That's not generating...
No, it's the same money. It's the money that currently the government's taking,
right?
But that actually we would like to have back. And then there's things like congestion pricing as an alternative. There's development levies. So there's a number of different things that we could use. But obviously, rates are a significant part of what's going forward. But we all know that rates are getting up to the level you're going, hang, that's starting to become a problem, not just in Wellington, but across the country. And that's part of the whole future for local government conversation that's going on with central government at the moment. OK. Let's move on to another major issue. Wellington is one of the least affordable places in the country, both to rent and to live. It is an issue for Wellington voters. Here's a perspective from one of those.
What are you going to do to allow more housing development, both in intensification in the city, but also through greenfields, to give more opportunities for everyone to find an affordable, safe home to live in?
50 to 80,000 extra people expected in the capital over the next 30 years. Now, I know you all have plans for housing. I want to know what's different. Tori, what sets your housing policy apart?
So on top of high densification across that corridor from waterfront to hospital, I want to ensure that there are green spaces, community spaces and mixed zone use, so we can also have benefits there for our local businesses. I also want to establish development bonuses and an urban design panel to ensure that they're designed really well and can stand the test of time.
Andy, you're the current mayor and you watered down the district plan to allow less intensification around Johnsonville. Did you lead a NIMBY council? No, actually, we didn't water it down around Johnsonville, along the Johnsonville line, sure. But what we've got to do is we've got to target our development along the areas where we're providing the best possible public transport. And the key bit of that is that mass transit route from the central city through to the south coast. And so one of the things I did pitch specifically to government was that if we're going to make MRT work, then we've got to have a lot of housing alongside it. And it's about 60% plus of the housing we're expecting. And they've said, yes, we agree. So we're looking to set up an urban development agency, which should have been set up in the last term of council. And I've also got out of... Why wasn't it?
Because the last council leadership didn't
You're the leader of the last council?
No, the last council before me.
OK, all right.
Yeah, the Leicester Eagle Council.
OK, sure. OK, yeah. So, Paul, you were involved in that one. Why don't we have an urban development agency already?
There's an in-house unit called Build Wellington. What this lacks is unity and leadership from the Mayor to put housing first. So the first thing I would do that's different is I would prioritise housing. Secondly, what I would do is bring in master plans. I said at my campaign launch that Wellington lacks a plan. We didn't go to central government and ask for money from the Housing Acceleration Fund,
yes,
$3.8 billion.
We did.
And what we did do was so small. Every other part of New Zealand did. Okay. And that's what I would do differently.
That's wrong. We actually did go to government.
We've got
one for Johnsonville, which is in the pipeline, the last stage of the pipeline right now.
I want to focus on that master plan. Isn't that the last thing that Wellington needs? Another few years of planning. Where is the urgency to build houses right now?
This is about an investment plan, but the urgency is about prioritising it and getting homes built from, say, the Basin Reserve, which Wellingtonians know well, up to the countdown to the hospital there. That has sat for 5 long years with no housing on it. In my time on council, I put a special housing area designation to make it easier. What happened is this council took their eye off the ball. It argued, it was divisive. I want to bring unity to the conversation and get spades in the ground.
OK, Tori, I want to bring you in here. What do you say to that?
I think there's a lot of talk here about more plans, but actually we just need to get things started. Plans already exist.
Yep,
They already exist. Let's just start building. We also need to increase our supply of council housing as well. And also we need to think about renters. So that's why I'm committed to working with Renters United to ensure that we're advocating for their rights as well.
Would you build above 6-storey apartments in the central city? Are you the most pro-intensification candidate here?
Yes, I would. Yes, I would.
I would.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We need to address housing crisis.
You said different.
and we allow for that. In fact, what we don't do, we've changed the district plan so you can't build less than 6 stories because we had an example of a 2-storey development. That is a waste of the airspace. True. So we don't want that to happen again.
Good point, Andy.
Excellent. OK, so let's move on to another big issue. It's time to talk transport. Let's Get Wellington Moving finally has a plan, but it needs $3 billion for funding from council to get there. Andy, how are you going to pay for that?
Look, there's a number of different things there. I've already mentioned congestion pricing as one of the tools there. So we're going to have some ongoing discussion with the government around that. The other bit which I think is promising is that the government is talking about how they equitably fund things like mass transit, because what we don't want to do is to have a different deal for Auckland than we have for Wellington than we have, for example, for Christchurch. And so that's an ongoing bit of the conversation.
Paul, where's the money going to come from?
So this is about so there isn't a plan in terms of the housing and urban development component for Let's Get Wellington Moving. The plan would allow others to invest in the plan and to build those homes. But the review needs to take care. I've talked about commissioning a review. That needs to take care of where we're getting our 20% of the $7.4 billion.
It's 40%. It's a lot of money. It's
20 each with the regional council. But what I will do is go back to central government and have a conversation, because I'd like to.
We're already doing it.
So, Tori, is that your approach too? More money from central government?
No, actually, I just want to get it moving. We're committed to funding. We literally want to get it moving. The thing people need to realise is that a full public transport system is great for our climate crisis. It's going to help us lower our emissions, and it's a fast, efficient, low-cost way for people to get across our city. What people want to see, and what people have been telling me, is they just want to get us started. They want to see those,
spades in the ground.
Spades in the ground, and I worry that more planning is going to add another few years.
Before Christmas.
OK, I want to talk big picture now, your vision for Wellington. And a lot of what we talked about is things that are already in progress or incremental changes. I want to know from each of you, what is your most ambitious idea for Wellington? Paul.
So first of all, I want to talk about my vision, and that's about restoring the mana of Wellington as the capital city. I talk about mana in terms of status and prestige. Wellingtonians have lost their mojo. We're not dying, we're not broken, but we need to get the vibe back.
OK, so specifically, your most ambitious idea?
My most ambitious idea will be to deliver housing in Wellington.
OK, Andy?
Look, we've already covered the pipes, we've already covered the transport, we've already covered the housing, so we'll go away from those ones. Look, I think it's really making sure we re-energise the heart of our central city, and that is, it's all the things, the buildings that we're bringing back, it's supporting the arts and culture, it is the new things we can do around there, it's lighting the place up. And I'm working with quite a number of different, both educational and business opportunities there. And if we can bring that, it's about building more jobs, building more educational opportunities, linking education to employment. So there's a heap of things that are going on. And I think collectively...
As for one idea. So
but they are all about energising the central city. It's 6.5% of our GDP there already. It's
Tori,
building that.
Your most ambitious idea for Wellington?
So I've already talked about the corridor from Waterfront to the hospital to really enable a lot more housing and Let's Get Welly moving. But actually what I want to add is we're in for a really disruptive few years, and we need to lean into that disruption. So I want more people to have access to mental health support and alcohol and harm reduction. We also have to look after our community while we're making these significant changes.
OK, quickly, absolutely, positively Wellington. It's been the slogan since 1990. You all want a new Wellington, an invigorated Wellington. Paul, what would your new slogan be?
Look, I'm not into slogans, I'm into getting things done, but I would keep that because Wellingtonians need to get the mojo back into the capital city. And look, it's tried and tested. Let's just get on with it.
Andy, have you got a slogan for us?
Not specifically. We have talked about whether we would replace or keep absolutely positive Wellington. It's a great attitude. I think that's the key thing.
But it needs to be true.
Yes.
Oh, look, I think most Wellingtonians have a really deep love for their city. And look, we've come through the fire, basically, COVID, the pipes, etc. But we are coming through that. And
Tori, you're a marketer. Slogan for Wellington?
Look, I'd want to change it up, but I want to pull on our talented people in Wellington to help me put that together.
Okay.
I'd want something a bit more ambitious, and the fact that we're building a climate resilient city.
Very quickly from each of you, 20 seconds. This is your final pitch to voters, at least today. There are 2 weeks to go. What would Wellington look like in 3 years' time under your leadership? Paul?
So I'm asking Wellingtonians to vote for me because you'll have a united council and a united Wellington, which we can be proud of, that puts the mojo back into our capital city. I want a master plan that delivers housing for Wellington. Okay. I want to put
20 seconds is up. Andy.
We'll have our housing entity, we'll have fixed our community housing provider, Town Hall will be back, the Takina will be back, the heart of the city will be really humming, we'll get our transport spades in the ground there as well, we'll be fixing the pipes, we've got a clear plan there. So there's going to be heaps of things happening. We are on the verge of major transformation.
Okay, and Tori, your vision for Wellington in 3 years' time?
I am the change that Wellington needs. I will tackle the climate crisis and housing crisis head on. What sets me apart from the rest is my coalition building skills, team leadership, and I'm someone who can take our city on board. We're in for a disruptive few years, and I want to be really honest about that. I am the only leader who can take Wellington through that.
Okay, and that is a wrap on our mayoral debate. Thank you so much to the candidates, to Paul Eagle, to Andy Foster and to Tori Whānau. Best of luck on October the 8th.
Thank you.
And we will return after the break with all the analysis from our political panel, Georgina Campbell, Peter Dunn and Dr Lara Greaves. Plus, just in, highlights from the Prime Minister's speech to the UN General Assembly in New York.
Mayana, and welcome back to Newshub Nation's Wellington Mayoral Debate Special. Plenty of substance to dissect with our panel. Senior Lecturer in New Zealand Politics at Auckland University, Dr Lara Greaves. Senior Wellington Issues Reporter for the Herald, Georgina Campbell. And MP for Ohariu from 1984 to 2017, Peter Dunn. Welcome to the program to you all. So quite a lively debate there. What stood out for you guys? What stood out for you?
I think what stood out for me is actually their lack of vision. When they were asked what their vision for Wellington was and to give one idea, I was really unimpressed with their sort of lack of ideas. And I think I'm underwhelmed by the mayoral campaign, and Wellington needs more than just fixing pipes and potholes. While that's very important, we do have an infrastructure crisis. Wellingtonians deserve more than that. We need some ideas to take our city forward and shake it up.
Yeah, absolutely. I was quite struck, Peter, by Paul Eagle's continued reference to a review. He wants to put it under review. Is that good enough when you're running for the mayor of a major city?
I was stunned, frankly, by his apparent lack of preparedness for this major role. He didn't seem to know a lot of things, or he didn't seem to want to know a lot of things. On the other hand, I thought Andy Foster had a lot of detail, but there wasn't much passion. Tory Whanau had lots of passion, but again, not the detail. Maybe if you amalgamated at least two of the three, you might get a candidate.
Lara, what about you? What did you think?
I thought that, so what's coming through with Paul Eagle is that idea that he's going to hit the ground reviewing, and that's not necessarily going to come across so well with voters, because the other two have more detail, kind of a bit, not less, maybe less of an overall plan, but they can hit with detail, with numbers and that sort of thing. So on that surface level, the idea that, I'll put in place a review doesn't come across so clearly. And I think it speaks to his broader campaign, where it hasn't necessarily come across that he's got as much of a plan and wants it as much in that. Yeah.
Georgina, was it interesting to you that Paul wouldn't say whether he would be going back to Parliament or be staying on as the MP for Wellington? Is that important in this race? Does he really want it?
I feel very strongly that Paul Eagle needs to say what he's going to do if he loses. Ratepayers and voters deserve to know. It's unfair on them that he's not being upfront on that. I asked him that question when he announced, so he should have an answer to that by now.
Peter, as a former Member of Parliament, what would you expect in that situation?
Well, I think he's in an invidious position. If he wins, fine, he could be the mayor for the next 3 years. If he loses, then I think he's got to really question his future in Parliament, not because he's done anything wrong, but because it's a bit of a blow to morale. And, you know, he's part of the 2017 Labor intake. He's one of the few that hasn't been promoted yet. So it suggests he's not going anywhere. So does he carry on as a backbencher forever, or does he move on and do something else? And I think voters do need to know the answers to these questions. It's about commitment.
Yeah, and Georgina, why is it so important to you to know that?
Because, you know, if he's just going to go back to Parliament, then I feel like we're just his, you know, sort of plan B. And I think that's unfair on Wellingtonians. I'm also, I guess, concerned about Tory Whanau also saying, well, you know, I'll just go for the Green Party list. I mean, is this more about central government ambition than actually being the leader that Wellington needs?
Yeah, it was interesting to me too when Tory Whanau said that. What do we think of her as a candidate? She's somebody who doesn't have any elected experience. She says that's sort of her greatest strength, but it is also her greatest weakness, isn't it?
Yes, so one of the things that's been quite noteworthy about her campaign is she did come out really early with it, like far earlier than anyone else, that she was going to stand and run. And so that has meant that she's been able to get out to events and be like quite upfront about running for mayor, where we haven't seen that through Paul Eagle. I think that's a really hard thing to come up against, but she's managed to, I think, through her campaign, build on that being a real weakness to try to turn it around to be about central government. Then, of course, the counterfactual to that was your point, that it kind of doesn't necessarily look like she's dedicated to local government, but you can actually see through her campaign her building that and reframing it to look like a strength, which I think's something that you kind of want in modern politics, that people are going to be media savvy enough to do that.
How have things... I've been surprised as I've been looking at all of these issues about how many problems Wellington has. It's my hometown. I grew up there. I have very fond memories of it being a great place to live and a great place to grow up. But how have things got so bad? Wellington's lost its way, hasn't it, Peter?
Yeah, and it hasn't just happened in the last 3 years. It's been happening over a long period of time, and we've had a succession, I think, of quite dysfunctional councils for a variety of reasons. And a lot of these issues which have been simmering or bubbling below the streets have been there. I can recall, I think it would be at least 10 years ago, there was a major upgrade of all the city's infrastructure, major pipes in the inner city. Streets were disrupted forever. And yet now we seem to have more problems as a consequence. So it's a long-term problem, and one of the things that worries me about this mayoral election is I don't see any of the candidates having the leadership capability to actually resolve it, partly because they don't control who's going to get elected to the council.
And it is known to be a very dysfunctional council, isn't it?
Yes, it is a council accused of being dysfunctional and infighting. And Peter's right, the mayor has to remember that they're only one vote, and the biggest issue for them is being able to work together with people successfully. And on the issues in Wellington, I mean, the street that I live on in Miramar in the eastern suburbs is a classic example. Council. On one end of the street is a pothole that's been there since March and has only just been fixed after repetitively opening back up with asphalt being poured on it. And on the other end, there's a massive slip from all the rain we've had.
What do you think, Lara, of these candidates in general? They're not what you would call sort of top-tier candidates, are they?
Well, look, what I would do is take that question before that you had for Peter back to that basics of that question, is that I'm not sure that anyone actually thinks that their local government functions well. That's not a theme that I kind of hear through sort of politics in New Zealand. And that's where I guess, I don't know if we have hope for the local government review and potential reforms in that area, but it just doesn't seem like it's a system that is working very well for people. I mean, we always say turnout's sort of an indicator of that, but yeah, is that the kind of broader question? Because even as an Aucklander, the Aucklander on the panel, the Aucklander here, I still would say the same thing about my local government.
Well, you're a politics lecturer. What can we do about that?
Well, I think it is like, that's where I'm kind of interested to see what that independent panel for that local government review will actually, and then what will get implemented from that, because it's not clear. Like, firstly, like one of the points that we all make is that everywhere's got a different voting system and a different structure, which is super confusing. We're postal voting, turnout's low. Like, it's just all of those sorts of real basic things. Like, firstly as well, like, no one really knows what local government does. Like, we have one lecture in a whole politics degree for 1 hour. Yeah.
Well, see, you look at all of these candidates, whatever their plans are, they're reliant on getting a majority around the council table.
Yes.
And, you know, any mayor in any council can have all of the vision you like, but if they can't actually do the numbers, they're going nowhere. And I think one of the challenges for whoever wins the Wellington mayoralty is how you assert, you know, Paul talks about leadership, Andy talks about leadership, how you actually assert the mayor's authority on the council to get something done. Otherwise, they just become, as they have been, talk fests going round and round in circles.
Well, I want to ask you, it's a difficult question, we're all looking into our crystal balls here, but who do you think came out on top today? Who do you guys think might get this?
STV, you know, that's the factor here, and incredibly hard to poll. Local government generally, but STV elections, I'm like, good luck, polling companies.
I think it's notable how tight the race is between Tory whānau and Paul Eagle, if recent polling is anything to go by. That surprised me. I would expect Paul to be further out in front, considering he has been the deputy mayor, he's the current MP for Rongotai. He has strong name recognition, and that's everything in local government. So that really surprises me. I also think there might be a road for Andy to come back up through the ranks. It was interesting to me that a candidate called Ray Chung showed up in polling, and I imagine his second preferences would go to Andy. So again, STV, there's a lot at play there.
Peter, what do you think? Sorry, did you have
I was just going to say, I think on the basis of today's debate, you had a couple of things became quite clear. You've got the mayor who's got policy almost pouring out his ears.
But can't get it through.
Can't get it through. The other candidates who've got sort of waffly dreams about things to do, but may have more popular appeal. It comes down to the preferences, I think, when the voting takes place. And it could well be, actually, that Tory whānau picks up preferences from both sides and comes through. Andy's, I think he's got a path through Ray Chung, and possibly maybe some disaffected Labour voters may opt for him over Paul Eagle, but it's very fluid, I think.
Oh, there's still a couple of weeks, 12 days to go, I think, until the election. It will be fascinating to see. Thank you so much for joining us here on our Wellington Debate special panel. Well, Akine, we will come back to the panel for the rest of the week's politics. And Jacinda Ardern has delivered her speech this morning to the General Assembly in New York. We'll be right back with all of the highlights.